Hello everyone, we are delighted to be here today. We have the great honor to be at the National Asian Art Museum, so also known as Guimet Museum. The École is the scientific partner of the exhibition Ming Gold, so that's our topic for today. So a few words about L'École before beginning. So L'École have been created in 2012 in order to spread the knowledge about jewelry, gemology, and also craftsmanship. So my partner for this talk will be Hélène Gascuel. So you are the curator of the Chinese furnitures and textile collections of the Musée Guimet, and Arnaud Bertrand, you are the curator of the Ancient China and Korea collection, and you are both the curator of this incredible exhibition. So let's deep into this subject, and maybe you can tell us more about this exhibition and this project.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for receiving us. It's really a pleasure to be here and to have the time and always the opportunity to go back in the exhibition and talk about these wonderful ornaments is always a great way to challenge ourselves also, to go always in the depths of the significance of everything through technical and historical and art historical themes. So it's quite of a pleasure to be here. Perhaps you want to begin, or do you want me to begin on speaking about the exhibition?
Yes, you can start.
Okay, so this is an exhibition that we are doing in with the incredible collection of the Qujiang Museum of Fine Arts in Xi'an, which is in this wonderful province of Shanxi. So it's it's a collection which is really rare, because today having gold collections from the Ming Dynasty, 15th, 16th century in general is quite rare, as you know, and so we have discovered both the technicity of the Ming period, so which we were able to talk about, and talk about also a very specific aspect of the Ming Dynasty, which is a world in global economic connections with the world. It's this time of discovery of the seas and new countries, and so it was a way of also to challenge the idea of talking about China. It's not only China, it's talking about the world through, I would say, the glimpse of what is Imperial Ming.
Of course. So we wanted to begin this talk by showing you these pieces of the School of Jewelry Arts collection. It's a gold crystals. The idea to begin with these pieces is that, of course, as we are going to talk about gold, let's begin with the beginning of the materials. We will go into details more after, but these pieces is what we consider as a crystal of gold, coming from primary deposits before the erosion give it this kind of nugget shape that we are more used to. So it's more sharp, more defined, more geometric. So this is, let's say, the beginning. And we also wanted to talk a little about this word, gold, in three languages. First, in French, we say or. In terms of etymology, or comes from aurum, so the Latin word that means gold also, and apparently it can be related to the goddess of dawn. So it's more the idea of the light coming from these materials and these brilliance also. For gold, the etymology, it comes from the German words gold, also from the Dutch language good, or the Teuton gold. So
you can see it through every language. This is wonderful.
Yes.
I'm very
but
impressed.
In this case, it's more related to brilliant metal. So it's interesting that, contrary of French, it's more the question of the material inside, that it's a metal, that is the first origin of the words. And these are also words in German and in Teuton give another word in English, yellow. So you have the relation in English between the metal and the yellow color that is directly linked for gold. But what about Chinese?
In Chinese, most common character, in one character, gold is tin. But sometimes we need to precise, because tin means also metal in general. So sometimes we need to precise and to say huang tin, which is to say yellow metal. So we find as well the yellow color and the metal.
Yes, so you have the both aspect. And without saying everything of all, but this etymology of gold in French will also give this chemical symbol AU for gold that we will go into details later on.
It's very interesting to see that in antiquity, in the 5 phases classic, Wuxing, the 5 colors of metal are defined as baitin, white metal, which is silver, the blue-green metal, qingtin, which is lead, the red metal, chitin, copper, black metal, heitin, iron, and yellow, huangtin, which means gold. We are talking about it today. Mm-hmm. But if we wonder about the meaning of gold in Chinese civilization, Chinese culture, we find that in the earliest period of Chinese civilization, the most important material is not gold, but jade. And we will see the character of gold derived in some aspect of the character jade. So the character jade comes from the character king, which 3 horizontal lines, which are we say they come from the 3 wrinkles on the forehead of the tiger. And the character jade is same as king, but with 1 additional dot on the lower right corner. And country is jade inside inside the wall. So the country is the power of the king, and the power link with jade inside a walled city. And yes, the term treasure or precious is also derived from the same character. And as we can see, the metal or gold is derived from jade as well. It's interesting to see that jade was appreciated in antiquity for its incorruptibility. It's a very hard material, a hard stone, and it's also soft and smooth to the touch. So it was two quality very appreciated in ancient time. And the use of gold developed in parallel with jade, especially during period where contacts with northern and southern people were most important, and during the period where the Silk Road were very active, so especially during Han Dynasty or during the Tang Dynasty. And the use of gold developed a lot when China was ruled by northern people during the Qin and Liao dynasty and the later Mongol Yuan dynasty, which precede the Ming dynasty. So we can say, in some respects, the use of gold very popular in Chinese Ming period is a kind of heritage from the Mongol period.
And actually, if you go back just a sequence, when you start learning Chinese, you start with the word king, Wang, which is very easy to draw, but it's very difficult in calligraphy. And the symbolism between is that the bottom line is linked to the earth, the top one is the sky, the middle one is the man or the people, and the one bringing everything together is the king, the one who has the relationships between the earth and the sky. So you do imagine that if you just put 1 dot and you put the jade, it means that, well, you're always connected to all the elements in the world. Well, that's a good transition, actually, as I can think about it, with the Ming period. As Hélène explained, there is a moment where, indeed, the gold is used at magnitude time, and this is during the Yuan period. The early Ming is an important time I think, in the history of China, because it's the moment where the major ethnic Han is taking over the Yuan Mongol and re-establishing, I would say, quite of a logic of stability within this country, who was drought through a long time of rebellions and war for a long time. So the capital is not in the north, as we can imagine, not Beijing, but it's in the south, closer to the coast, closer also and further away from the Mongols in a certain logic. So from the beginning, you can understand that the first logic is to try to come back to what was the beauty of Chinese civilization, society, aesthetic. And so the Ming directly go back to the Tang dynasty. The Tang is the moment where you had a glorious period of wonder and cosmopolitan exchange, but also beauty in every kind of craftsmanships. And so, of course, you starting having some laws to say you have to dress back as like it works at the Tang period, you have to dress this way. And you start having also this logic of bringing back the examinations for the states, and progressively you have a stability in the country for working on all the agrarian, agricultural connection between every provinces, to have all the materials to build up this empire since the early stages of the reigns of Hongwu. And well, of course, I mean, when you talk about the Ming period, I mean, I imagine that we don't talk about gold ornaments right away, unless you're already a specialist of Chinese civilization. And even so, I had a lot to learn in one year. As Hélène knows, I've been learning a lot when we were discussing. But indeed, when we talk about the Ming, we talk about the Forbidden City, we talk about Beijing, the Temple of Heaven, and of course, the magnificent craftsmanship that was coming out from this moment of, I would say, economic and cultural stability, with, of course, the production of porcelains from Tingtezhen, which is already an important place of development of ceramics since an early stage, since the Tang period, actually, and of course during the Yuan, and since during the Ming, by going into the making Beijing and the Forbidden City a place of, of splendor and representation of a symbolic connection between earth and heaven, the Ming have arrived in the 15th century at the first state of a glorious period. So, well, that's a sum up of the Ming. Yeah, people around need to read books afterwards.
Yes. Yeah, difficult to sum up three.
Would be complicated.
2 minutes. So for today, as we love to do it in 3 parts at l'école, we will first talk about working with gold, as much as the material gold and as much as the savoir-faire, craftsmanship. Also, then second time we will talk about gemstones and the search of colors, because most of the time when we talk about gemstones, except diamonds, we are thinking about colors and the use that we can have of them, and that will bring us to the third part about the uses and symbolism of the incredible pieces that is in this exhibition. So let's dip first with working with gold. So at the beginning was the atom. Because if you talk about gold, you have first to talk about what is gold in a scientific way. So gold is one of the elements, as well as carbon, as well as oxygen, you have gold. The way the gold is defined in this periodic table is directly linked to the number of particles, protons, that is in the nucleus of the atoms. In this case, 79, and it will bring to many properties related to gold. So, of course, one that can be quite simple but useful for jewelry, it's a solid element at ambient temperature, otherwise it would be tricky. And also it has a good properties in terms of electricity, it's a good electrical conductor also. But that's the chemical point of view, let's say. We can talk about gold also in a more geological point of view, because gold, as many other heavy elements, have been created, let's say, have been is the result of some important nuclear reaction of the explosion of supernova 13.5 billion years ago during the Big Bang. And these elements, on the contrary of others, have the great ability to be very stable. So even if it have been produced so a long time ago, it's still present in the Earth because of this. And this chemical element is quite rare at the surface of the Earth, but because of some process that go inside the terrestrial crystal, what we call actually hydrothermal fluids. So you have to imagine very hot water with other chemical elements that will go through fracture fissures in the rocks, and that will dissolve the rocks around and sometimes bring some chemical elements like gold. And then with this hot water will go slowly to more acceptable temperature and pressure, it will crystallize. And at this moment, we have the crystal. Because that's also something very interesting for gold. It is a chemical element, but it is also a crystal. By crystal, we mean a solid on which the elements, constituents, atoms, will be ordered in a very regular patterns. And here we have the atomic structure of gold. So it will crystalline in a cubic shape, cubic system. And then sometimes you have erosion after in a second time, and you will have these nuggets. In a second time, as the one that we can see on the right. So gold, an atom, a crystal, but also a mineral. By mineral, we mean a solid that has been formed naturally in the earth, and that most of the time is crystallized. And the very particularity for gold is that it's a native element. It means that it has only gold inside gold. There is not many options of mineral that belongs to the native element. There is diamonds also, but here we are talking about gold. So gold has some properties that would be interesting when we are going to talk about jewelry. First of all, the fusion temperature. It's around 1064 degrees, Celsius degrees actually. So it's more than silver. Silver is around 900 and platinum is around 1700. So it's much more for platinum. So the good part with gold is it's a high temperature, but still it's possible to get this temperature, because for gold, and you were talking about porcelain, it's the same, it is the control of fire that is very important to be able to manipulate these materials and to be able to produce jewelry in a second time. So we are going to focus on 4 gold properties. First of all, the color. Yes, it's a yellow mineral. We talk about this from the beginning. This will give importance also when probably we talk about symbolism, because the color is most of the time very important for that. Second one, it's stable materials. This is very important because on the contrary of silver, it will not oxidize. So we will keep the aesthetics that we look for, and also it will not interact with the human body. That's why sometimes in the old time we were using it for tooth, because it's not interacting with body. So it's a good point also for jewelry, not have health issues. The third one will be about malleability. So it is the ability of gold to be transformed in thin strings, so to be stretched. So this would be important when we are going to talk about the techniques of filigree, for examples. And last but not least, ductility. So it is the ability of gold to be bent, to be hammered, and to resist to this. So again, for craftsmanship, it will be very important to have these 2 important properties. So maybe you want to talk a little about the filigree. I think we have a video about the techniques of filigree.
Yes, actually filigree and granulation are 2 techniques very, very important in golden object during Ming Dynasty. Those 2 techniques developed to a point never seen before at that time, so we have 2 short animation to explain those techniques.
these are the videos that you can see within the exhibition of the first part, very necessary for the public to understand the complexity of making objects with the filigree or granulation techniques, for instance.
Yeah, and especially because you have this ability with gold to create this very thin string. We say that for 1 gram you can create a thin string of 2 kilometers with a very thin diameter, but still. So I think you wanted to talk about granulation also. Yes, we have
That's one of our favorites video. We like this one a lot. When we were starting preparing the exhibition, we had this one as a prototype and we would say, wow, this is going to be a good exhibition. We were happy about this one. Because generally we don't have the relationship between technique and object, you know, it's very blurry for everyone. And when you talk about the technique, I'm thinking like I'm back to school, working, you know, on chemical, you know, having an examination at the end. It's like,
it's nice.
I have to go back. I have to go back to the Mendelier of tablets, but it has its real purpose working this way, I think.
And those videos, as well as the other one you can see in the exhibition, are developed with the scientific contribution of the École.
School of Archery. So you have this pair of boxes that you wanted to focus.
Yes, we wanted to start with this pair because it's a very magnificent piece. So it's a pair of 2 boxes made with a filigree technique. It represents, on the cover of the box, there is a lying deer, which is holding a stem of pomegranate in its mouth. And so it's a kind of auspicious pattern because both deer, which is associated with longevity and also with good career in the imperial administration. And pomegranate is associated with the idea of, how to say, a long family with many sons, which can bear the family name. So it's very important in Chinese traditional culture. And the box is really amazing, all work on filigree, with different pattern on both on the cover and the lower part of the box, and different stones as well. And we can see that the color of the 2 boxes are slightly different, but both are gold. And so we will ask the question, what's the difference between the 2, and how can we explain this difference besides the stone color difference? What is the difference in the metal itself?
Yeah, so we can maybe explain this with alloy. So we are going to talk a little bit about pure gold and alloy. So maybe you have heard about this expression 24 karat gold. It's an expression that come from the ancient time, and actually the beginning is a solidus, a gold coin that were created by Constantine the Great around 310. And this coin was a standard for the economic and monetary system of the Byzantine. And these coins was weighing very precisely 4.5 grams. So at that moment, when they were weighing some precious material, gemstone or species, they were using carob seeds. So carob seeds, that was very interesting because it's seeds that keep the same weight depending on the temperature and the humidity, and from one seed to another it's quite the same weight also. So it's very nice to use them to weight some very tiny objects, and these carob seeds give the name to carat. In terms of unit of weight, we are still using the metric carat now for weighting gemstones. For gold, you see the writing is slightly different because actually now on we are not using carat as a weight measure, but as a way to say the percentage of pure gold that is in the alloy. So 24 carat will be for pure gold, 22 carat is around 90.91%, 18 carat around 75, 9 carat around 37.5 percentage of pure gold. So as we're talking about alloys, it will depend on the other metal that we put inside. So it can be copper, it can be silver, or it can be zinc. And you see with this diagram that depending on the metal that is involved, it will slightly change the color. So if you put more copper, it will give more reddish hue. If it's more silver, it will go more to whitish hues. So that's the main reason. So probably it can explain if you use different alloy, the different of color of these two boxes. But
we have the same thing for bronzes in China, ancient China. The percentage of lead and copper will give a different color, of course.
Yeah, because bronze is an alloy. It's not even a pure a pure metal at the beginning. But if we go back to the boxes, there is an inscription on the down part, on the base.
And so, yes, the inscription precise that the boxes are made by the silverware or metalware, precious metalware bureau, and it was made in the Xinshou year, which means in 1601. Yeah. And it is precising, and that's why we wanted to talk about it here, the quantity of pure gold in the alloy. And so for the boxes, it's 85% of pure gold.
Yeah, so it would be around or 22 karat gold in France. So quite pure gold. Yeah. And also it's it can maybe explain how they were able to do this filigree, because as the gold is more pure, as you will have, it will be more easy to work with. So maybe let's move to our second part. So gemstones, and you wanted to begin with this sentence.
Yeah, well, because we actually started the exhibition with this sentence, a long time ago. When you start thinking about a subject, you go through historical documents, and the Ming time period is great because you have a lot of narratives and gazettes and poems and everything you can find at this period, which is printed out and accessible for not just, the elite, but for everyone. So a lot of people are talking about gold, about jewelry, about social ranks related to these very precious objects. So indeed, this is the kind of, I would say, of coat that was quite useful for preparing the exhibition, because it's linked also to aesthetic logic with what we talk about gold, especially for feminine ornaments. But I think we'll talk about that also a bit more afterwards when we'll talk about, hair ornaments, etc. So yes, and we have an object.
So where gold and jade jewelry.
Oh yes, you wanted to say
this first slide.
Yeah,
so right. Yes, let's move to the scepter.
This is the particular kind of object that is also very representative of what we talk about the Ming period. As we can see, people who read Chinese will say "zhuyi." Zhuyi is very hard to translate actually in another language, because we talk about scepter, but we don't really know if we can talk about the scepter. It could be also a very distinguished authority tablet that was used this way for a long time before the Ming period. The difference is, at this moment, the zhuyi loses its very, I would say, symbolic and I would say nearly religious use, and goes more to a private kind of authority for someone who can be, of course, in the palace, or for an authority within the house. And so jouir would be in English translated to do as you please, according to your wishes, something like that. So we do, as we can see, we do have here technically an object which is really precise, used of course with filigrane, the incrustation of gems, of course, of rubies, for instance. And you have an inscription, you have, oh no, it's okay. You have an inscription which is exactly the same that Hélène talked about, which is very specific. These kind of inscriptions were made in provincial or capital office. But indeed, the object is built through the incrustation also of a very important jade, probably nephrite for this one. So, of course, worked with metal tools, and which has been probably reconditioned to be placed within the objects. Here you have the presentation of a very famous mushroom, which is related to Taoism. It's the name of the mushroom, remember?
Ganoderma.
Ganoderma. You see, I always forget this name all the time. It means also that we'll, I mean, it shows the human side of my part in here, which I don't remember. But these mushrooms, and actually the preparation of elixir of immortality is very long time ago in China, something quite traditional. And so the shape is linked to mushroom, but within it, this is where we start having the second part of the interest of the exhibition, not just specific to gold ornaments, but here you can see it is the iconography. Because of course you have the technical part, but then you have the iconography you find is within. And so if you go to the next slide, you can see that we have the presentation of a heron, or kind of heron, an aigrette, which is a bird called lu in Chinese, which is, I would say, flying within lotus, which is called lian. And so you combine, because in Chinese you have a very, it's quite complex, it's a complex language, but one word can signify something else. So, 一如恋歌, for example, here would means I wish you to go up or succeed in your examination. Using birds and lotus, you have another significance. And you said also on the other side, where you find the very aesthetic graphy of shou, which means longevity, related to something that no one sees in the exhibition, because you really have to have good eyes, which is a bat. And bat in China is a very auspicious motif. And the bat is related to a word fu, and fu shou, show longevity, fu shou jouir, which means do as you please and to have all the longevity and all the wishes you want. So indeed, when you give this to someone, you see the technical part, but you have a lot of symbolism inside, and that makes it really interesting to study.
So maybe you can talk a little about this jade part that you described already. You were saying that it might be nephrite, most probably. Actually, jade is one of the umbrella term for two minerals, very umbrella, jadeite for pyroxene, and that belongs to the pyroxene group, and nephrite that belongs to the amphibole group. So it's two very distinctive minerals. Actually, they have no relation in terms of chemistry and structure, but it has been for a long time used as jade because of this color and because of toughness. Because most of the time, jadeite and nephrite come in green color. It can be also a different one, like lilac, brown, yellowish, but most of the time greenish, also whitish for the scepter. And the toughness was also important in terms of symbolism, because the jade was related to indestructibility and purity because of this. And it's quite incredible that they were able to do this pattern with very precise details, according to the fact that it is a very tough materials. And by toughness, we talk about the resistance to the shock and the hammer. So it can be very, very tricky. So let's move to another pieces of the exhibition on which we can find umber. Umber is a material, organic material, so it's coming from fossilized resin. So it's not as important as jade, but there is traces of the use of umber for more than 3,000 years in China also. Maybe you can tell us a little more about the way we can call umber in Chinese?
Yeah, so umber in Chinese is hupo, but there are two ways to write hupo in Chinese. So one is really linked to umber, and the other one is with the character tiger and the character po. I don't get the term in English. Please help me. Lam. Sound. Yeah. So it's a tiger sound. Yes, which is quite evocative.
So actually you can, that is interesting, is that umber is not, at least for us in the Western world, not very related to China, but actually it's not something anecdotic, because even in some Han tombs, so tell me if I'm wrong, but if I remember well, the Han dynasty is between 260 before Common Era to 220 after Common Era.
Yeah.
So, okay, I've done well my homework.
Well done.
So they found around 60 graves in which they found umber artifacts, so it's not something anecdotal, it's kind of common. But the question is, where come from this umber? Because we don't know great important umber deposits in China. We know Baltic region and we know Myanmar, Burmese region. So there is a way, in a scientific way, to look for the traceability of the stones, of these umber pieces. So they have done an analysis, a scientific study on these pieces in this grave. And one of the techniques is what we call infrared spectroscopy. So on the graph, you will find a reference for the Baltic umber, a reference for the Burmese umber, and two of the artifacts that is on the picture on the left. And the characteristic we are going to look at is the one I highlighted in yellow. It's what we called in gemology the Baltic shoulder. And as you can see, the artifact doesn't have this Baltic shoulder. So it seems that these artifacts of these graves come from Burma. But some other umber artifact that is more from the Ming period have been analyzed also by the team in a more recent study, and they find out that these ones were coming from the Baltic using the same process and analysis. So it's interesting to see that for this period, you can find umber from the Baltic and from the Myanmar as well, for both. And that brings us to the question from how it comes to this point. So probably Silk Road, but probably also some maritime expedition.
Yeah, it's just to complete what you're saying, it's interesting because this is quite new work. I mean, if you start looking at every kind of jade in a museum, both, I mean, in any kind of collection, you always say jade, you don't really know from where it comes from. And I think it's the same case with amber. I mean, you can say it comes from the Baltic, but you can even go further, say which part of the Baltic, and you can go which part of the Burmese part, or where exactly in China. And this kind of work, as you presented, is really important now because it talks about also regional trade. It doesn't need to go further away, but indeed there is something going on during the Ming period, of course. And there's this there's a very important knowledge of trade routes through the maritime trade for a long time before the Ming period. So here you have a map which is actually a Korean map similar to the one we found in 1398 of a big map made by the Ming dynasty, and which actually was taking again a model from the Yuan, showing that you actually can see Marseille. I'm saying that for the people in Marseille because they love when we talk about this city, and which is on the far other side. But there is a very good understanding already of all the trade routes working at this time. And even in the 8th century of our era, there was a Chinese maritime person who made the trip until even to the nearest Orient. So there is this knowledge. It doesn't come from everything. It's from a lot of experience and understanding of where you go and get these kind of materials, which kind of gems. And it's also a logic of, diplomatic embassies to know also which kind of country can can be controlled by the Ming. I mean, there's also this logic of expanding, and this is where this man, Ma Re, comes along. So this is a person who is really famous in China. He is, you would call the Christophe Colomb, you would say, of the Chinese part, but perhaps it wouldn't be the best comparison we could do. He made a name of himself in connection with the second emperor, Yongle, who is the one who transported the capital from the south to the north to Beijing. In fact, Ma Re is a Muslim person who has a tight family connection with Central Asia, actual Uzbekistan, and you know, we say Ma is in people who are of Islamic religion, which is very famous in the Yuan period and the Ming period also. And he was living actually in the very south part of China, so quite close to Burmese actually. And progressively he made a name of himself by going to fight for Yongle. And during a fight there is a very famous battle for which he had the name Zhang Bing, and he became Zhang He progressively. So he was part of two ideas. First, Yongle understood that during the Yuan period is a kind of model of expansion of empire, and so he said we need to have an important maritime strength, and boats have to be built at this moment. So Zhang He was part of this logic, and so he started going through, and maybe you can go to the next slide, through everywhere from the south of Singapore going up to the Malaysian Peninsula, which is a part where you have a lot of pirates, and you have to say it's complicated to work through these roads, and then go to the Sri Lanka, Ceylon, and then it's not so far to arrive to the Arabian Sea, and they go down to Africa. This is the exact same road that Marco Polo did when he came, well, he fled from Kublai court to go around to arrive to the nearest sea. So this is the kind of trade which were very famous already at that time. The difference is that Zhang He's exhibition are official, and so of course we write much more about it, and so we know which kind of treasures he brings back.
Yes, and they found a grave, a tomb, in which they found many pieces they can relate to the expedition of Zhang He, and for example, more than 500 goldsmiths pieces and many gemstones. And some of the gemstones are really related to Zhang He because only the maritime expedition could have bring them. For example, turquoise from Nishapur, so it's from Iran and Persia sector. And also they find out these ingots, these gold ingots, on which there is a very interesting inscription.
Yes, so in the tomb of the Prince Liang of Qujiang, it's a very important tomb when we study gold object from Ming period. So many objects, and this ingot with an inscription telling that it was made with metal, precious metal, so with the gold acquired in the Western Ocean as well as other places during the trip to the Western Ocean in the 4th month of the 17th year of Yongle, which means in 1419, which is during Zhang He's expedition. So it means that even some gold was bring back from those exhibitions, not only gemstones.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, because at that time there was no, at least known China gold deposit in China at that time. So maybe you can talk a little about these pieces?
Well, of course, because since these expeditions have been well marked through historical narratives, we need to go on the field. As an archaeologist, that's the first thing you do, to see which is the impact of this trade, what Zhang He brings back, as Hélène explained, as you said also, gold and gems, and what do they bring? And so there's a lot of porcelains that are brought to the I would say, to the eastern coast of the Arabic Peninsula, and we can see some important local archaeological sites where we found in the African Peninsula a lot of these porcelains, and we can find them also quite close to the Qatar, to actual now Oman, and even on the other side next to the Mecca. Also, we have some very interesting discoveries of porcelains which date of the 15th and 16th century. It shreds in general by the end of the 15th century because Zhang missions are stopped by a decision from the imperial court not to go further. But that doesn't mean that there's no more trade. It just explains that trade is made elsewhere, and perhaps also on a private kind of logic. So I will go very quickly on this one, but I think people who will know more about Zhang just need to read a lot of books, but you have to understand that at this moment, well, there's a lot of books to read now, of course. We are like a kind of open door to this moment, but there are, of course, travels, accounts, and information that comes from important 16th century narratives.
So we wanted to talk about the gemstones that are set on these pieces, and first of all about the red gemstones, because red color is important in China, right?
Yes, red color is very important. It's an auspicious color associated with the sun and with south exposure. So it's very, very auspicious and very appreciated by Chinese people. Even today, the red color is associated with all the happy events such as New Year, Chinese New Year, and births and weddings, and all the important events in life. And since the Ming dynasty, we find many red stones on golden pieces.
Yes, there is this example of this crown, phoenix crown of the Empress, on which there is around 71 gemstones, mostly red gemstones, also blue sapphire and yellow sapphire. And actually, 88% of the red gemstones are spinels, not rubies. So the question is, did they use these spinels in purpose, knowing the materials, or was it a kind of confusion, the same that we had in Europe, in the Western world? Because in the Western world, usually we confuse many times the spinels, the red spinel, and the rubies. Both were red. We both call them escarboucle, carbuncles. And one of the reasons of the confusion is that it comes from the same region, Myanmar, and it comes from the same geological deposits. You see that these two samples, they are the same matrix, the same mother rocks. So difficult at the time where science and chemistry was not developed to know actually what we have in hands. So there is different pieces in the exhibition on which we can see, as you were saying, rubies, also blue sapphires. So at that time, probably the blue sapphire may come from Ceylon, and the rubies maybe from Myanmar, that were important places at that time. And also many examples with pearls. At that time, pearls was more probably what we call natural pearls, no human intervention for them. And the main region of production of pearls at that time was Manchuria, so one of the regions that is still producing a lot of pearl now on. So that's probably, we can guess, a natural freshwater pearls on these two examples.
Now, what people need to understand is that of course, you have all these precious gems coming from everywhere, but they were filled inside the treasury space, you know, where the fear was to lack in this kind of stone, to have everything you need right here to make these objects. So you had a big stock of these, you know, gems coming from a long distance, to be sure that you didn't need them right away, or you had
a big safe.
Exactly, like a big safe. So that was the good place to do a robbery.
Just maybe before we go further to the third part, just about the crown. People see, we are talking about the crown, so it's Empress Xiaoting's crown, so found in the Wanli Mausoleum. This is not a piece of the exhibition. But people see the blue color, and we have not say anything about it. The blue color comes from kingfisher feathers incrustation, so which is a very old technique in China and always often associated with precious gemstones.
Yeah, very important material also. Not so used in Western world, but for Chinese culture, of course. So that brings us to the third part, uses and symbolism. And you wanted to begin with these pour.
Well, yeah, because these pour actually come from the Persian world from a long time ago. Sorry? From a long time ago, and so you can see that one is influencing the other. The Ming period, I think that people will perhaps forget a bit about the Persian influence because it's already very present, you know, in Chinese ornaments and Chinese pour. Since the Tang Dynasty, you have a lot of relationships in between, of course. And so I would say golden and silverwares have influenced porcelains, and so you can find in the exhibition one of the kind which is clearly of this structure. And if you go in the next slide, well, you can find them, of course, presented within the painting, which is the part of people who will come. Everyone is going to come to the exhibition, of course. They're going to see the painting, and the painting have this logic of explaining in context. That's what we wanted to do, how we use these vessels. And I would say, perhaps if you go on the other one, right there, you have actually this moment where Emperor Xi'an, the end of the 15th century, is enjoying a nice time in his imperial garden, playing with this dress game called the tohu. And just next to him, you have, in fact, a servant which is about to present, or which is ready to pour some wine, probably, for the emperor after this moment of nice sport and hobby time. And this is the exact kind that you can find within the exhibition. So some are very practical and some are very authentic, I would say pretty objects, just there to show a kind of ostentatious decorative pattern.
We wanted to talk about another very important wine vessel, which is a tué. So it's a shape coming from antiquity, so very early Chinese civilization. So as far back as 17th or 16th century before Christ, we find this vessel in bronze vessel used for sacrifices to the ancestors. And so it's a very special shape with 3 legs. And this shape came back, maybe we can go to the next slide. It was very popular during Ming Dynasty. At that time, it was made also in porcelain, and it became a drinking cup. And so for this purpose, we needed to hold the cup on a plate. And because of the 3 leg, it was difficult to hold it, and so the Chinese people invented this kind of plate with a mountain in the center. And so this is a xie champagne, which was a very popular shape in Ming Dynasty, but only for the use of the emperor and his close relatives. The piece from the Qujiang Museum of Fine Art in Xi'an is a very exceptional one with a pattern which looks like, maybe we can go to the next slide, and the next one. It looks like a dragon, but it's not a real dragon. It's a feiyu in Chinese. So feiyu means flying fish, and we can recognize it because it has wings. The normal dragon, which is an imperial symbol, has no wing. It can fly, but with no wing. And it has as well a fish tail, so very characteristic and distinctive characteristic of the feiyu. And the plate has an inscription, but we already talked about, so it's this kind of inscription. So
the same kind of information about the alloy.
We will go to the next piece, a very extraordinary piece, which is a sash pendant with a feuille as well, so same symbol. So the sash pendant or page 3 is an ornament which is for women because for official occasions they used to wear a special scarf with or sash with this pendant. Yes, very extraordinary piece.
One of your favorite, I think, of the exhibition.
Yeah, it's a very important one.
I've learned a lot when you talk about it.
This shape originates during Song Dynasty, and because the Ming wanted to restore the tradition of classical China, they look after Song tradition, and so the women lady attire really is really close from Song attire. So with a phoenix crown and sash with pendant.
So that brings us to the hair ornament.
Well, yeah, which represent quite an important percentage of ornaments within the exhibition. People have to understand that at this time, and since the early Confucian era in China, we don't cut our hair as a woman or as an adult male. So as a woman, I think you need to find some kind of technical structure to maintain everything in position, but nothing is made, I'm talking as a man because I never, of course, wear those, but you have to understand that, of course, every element, every hair ornament you put inside has a symbolism between it and has a use, a function, and it's not placed like this, I would say, randomly. Generally, they are positioned both, they're like the logic yin-yang. Gold is used also to shine the face, which is generally white, and this kind of dragon, which is actually one of our favorites of together, is the typical kind of dragon you find during the Ming period, trying to swallow the stone of knowledge, and at the end you have this very tiny spoon, which is actually used to, I would say, clean the inside of the ear, which we call in Chinese the san shi. I mean, every object can have a Swiss tool behind it. And if you go a bit further, so these are the kind of ornaments you find within the hair. You have to understand that no one goes so close to these objects inside a woman's dress. I mean, you have an intimacy that we are exposing here to understand the elements. And here you have flowers in blossom and fruits, which it's also the fear of having this season, never be able to regenerate all the time. And if you go to the next slide, you have these famous buyao. So buyao is actually the word for talking about mobile elements which make sound and move a little bit like the crab, and which have some kind of scenic logic. And when you work ibu buyao, it's also having little steps all the time. So it's a way of walking at the court. Lanterns, of course, are related to, you would say, the end of the celebration of the New Year's Eve in January or early February.
Are they supposed to wear pairs?
Always pairs. Always pairs. Yeah, that's a logic trend.
So another kind of purse, but pendant. Yes, pendant.
Yes, after ornaments, we will have a small view on earrings. And so there are different kinds of earrings during Ming times. This is classical pendants in shape of calabash. So the calabash was a very auspicious symbol. With its many seeds, it was associated with the idea of giving birth to many sons. So this is a calabash for the one who doesn't know the fruit. And another kind of earring is...
if you want to go to the next slide.
Next slide. Yes, one, which means rings, earrings. And the last type, so the next slide, is very... we don't have it. Okay. We missed one slide, no problem. So the last kind is ear studs, which looks like a clover So this spice, a very famous spice. And yeah, so let's talk about bangles or bracelets.
Bracelets, which would be the last part in this exhibition part. We talk about the different, we sorted by thematics these ornaments. And indeed, bracelets are very famous in China and everywhere in the world. And they're always, I mean, equipped. Everyone, as male or female, has always one on each wrist. They are designed to protect, and I would say the particularity in these kind of bracelets here is the one on the left. I mean, you have an inscription inside which means in Chinese Fu Shou Kong Ning, and Kong in Chinese means health. So I wish you having a lot of healthy moments of life, and we always know that in Chinese medicine the bad things come from, you know, the extremities, from the bottom of the legs. If you have to do Tai Chi Chuan at this moment, you have to let go of the spirits and the energy, and so the bracelet has also this really important use behind it.
So we finished to talk about some of the pieces. So you definitely need to come to see more and to have more time to see them. Just quick information, the next conference, next talk of L'École would be about pearls from Bahrain to Paris. So we have time for a few questions, and I have some for you. So I have one for Hélène. Is it possible to tell from the fallow deer boxes why one has more stone than the other? On one, there are no stones at the bottom of the box.
It's very difficult to say. For us today, it's a pair because two boxes are coming to us. So two boxes are here today, but at the beginning maybe there were more. In the exhibition we have some vases. The series came by 5 or sometimes 4 pieces, so it's not sure there were only 2 at the beginning. And especially for a pair, it's quite surprising to see that they are so different, even if it's the same shape. So maybe it was a little bigger series with different models.
Okay. And one question for Arnaud. I think we still have time for one last. What influence did neighboring countries such as North Korea have during the Ming period in terms of economic exchanges and stylistic and decorative elements?
Well, you want me to answer this in 30 seconds? I think the question...
That's the question of the auditors.
Yeah, I think it's Korea. North Korea or South Korea is the same thing, of course. Or I imagine that the question is more geographically. And so to understand well is the influence of Korean, you would say, economy
yes,
on
and
the Ming?
stylistic. That was the question.
Well, I would say that it has very little to go with golden or metal ornaments. It's more about ceramics. Korean are very famous for celadon, and actually the Ming period go to see the celadon fabrics and kilns inside the Choson, early Choson period or end of the Goryeo period, and they find that there is excellence in crafts. So in general, as we can maybe understand, Ming and Korean relationships are very strong and rich. You can see it from the maps and everything. And the Korean have been occupied by the Mongols for a long time, but they also resisted. But they also have a very long-term, I would say, experience in the use of gold and silver ornaments from the Xi'an period. And also Korea is a place where you have a lot of iron coming and arriving in China since the first millennium BCE. So that would be a lot of difficulty to explain in more than 1 minute. So but thank you for the question. Yeah.
So thank you, Hélène. Thank you, Arnaud, for our talk today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to all of you for listening us today, and maybe see you next time.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.
Bye.